What's good, folks? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review AFI's 2006 number one album, December Underground. Now, this did pretty rock solid, had a pretty massive hit in Miss Murder, but then it had a couple follow-up hits and came out basically in the summer of 2006, despite the fact that this is advertised as kind of a winter album. But it does basically have a number of things about it that kick ass, and it is going to probably get a pretty high score. But the album that preceded this record was 2003 Sing the Sorrow, which also did pretty good. That was kind of like the preemptive to their breakout, because in a lot of ways I feel like this is probably their biggest album, but I feel like Sing the Sorrow seems pretty good. I haven't listened to that yet, but I want to say it's pretty rock solid. That one got 3 singles off of it also. But the thing about like AFI this time around is they kind of come off to me as like a pop rock band. It says that they're alternative rock on Wikipedia and post hardcore, but 2 out of 3 of the singles from this project were actually charting on the regular Billboard 100 as opposed to just the rock charts. And that kind of happens sometimes on like rock charts. You'll get songs like Kryptonite or some of those songs that like Puddle of Mud have done, or those type folks, like when you think of like Blurry or something like that. But it kind of feels like this record was kind of advertised as more of like a pop rock record, just because I mean, for an emo album and an alternative album, it actually charted pretty high. And I feel like Miss Murder is not just a distinct song, it's actually one of the best pretty much songs of the 2000s decade. It just was that good of a song, and pretty much a rather distinct kind of definitive rock record from 20 years ago, and just the 2000s, the George Bush years, that type of stuff. So it definitely has that consolidation. But I felt like, unfortunately, despite how massive Miss Murder was, the problem with it was that the other singles did not quite reach the level. I mean, Love Like Winter got close. It's not like it's a bad song, but in terms of just the sheer kind of knocked out of the ballpark vibe of Miss Murder, it doesn't have a second follow up. This is kind of a quiet record just in terms of rock. It's just surprising how kind of through the motions it kind of went and just did not really have. I mean, it stuck around and the singles lasted past the album and charted into 2007 from its summer 2006 release, but it only had 3 singles that kind of did that. You would think normally a record that lasts about 18 months or over 9, 10 months into the subsequent year would have like 4 or 5 singles, but this record lasted 9, 10, 11 months the following year just off of 3 singles. That's kind of the concept. So really, like I said, Miss Murder was quite a large single, but Davey Havoc's pretty good. I mean, he kind of reminds me of like I'm trying to think of who that was. I can't remember. Like um 3 Days Grace. He's very similar to the guy from 3 Days Grace, especially around that time in 2006. I feel like him and 3 Days Grace band were pretty much swapping it out in terms of like that tech, that kind of electronic gothic rock that was going on around the time. And then if you factor in Fall Out Boy, those three just kind of really tore things apart 2006, 2007, which is pretty good. I appreciated all 3 of these cats or these folks. So that just kind of happens to be the thing. So, but yeah, to talk about the single, so Miss Murder was the lead single, has a really distinct chorus. I think it should connect with a lot of people pretty instantaneously if you don't know about it yet. And just really comes off as like a sports bar and just a college bar and a night bar kind of vibe about it. Just easily kind of place where you would hear loud music and have like beers and that type of stuff, and just an overall place where there just would be music, but also kind of food and festivities. Just kind of comes off as just an easy night venue kind of spot, something Hard Rock Cafe, those type places. Easy kind of going, get some lunch, get some dinner, evening food type stuff, and it just really kicks ass the whole time. I felt like it's very distinct. Like I said, this is one of the definitive rock songs of the 2000s. Definitely charted extremely high and may almost be AFI's signature song. Now, I don't want to write them off as saying that this is their absolute best moment, but it just is extremely distinct and has a lot of qualities to it. So it's definitely one to check out. Comes off as a nice summer song too. Just has a lot of up tempo, kind of peppy kind of energy that really goes a long way. And I was glad for it. Definitely one of the best moments on this album. So the second single was Love Like Winter, and this was what carried AFI through the holidays. And this is what carried AFI through the holidays and was kind of like the kind of different tempo second single that's like you go from a hot high tempo kind of summer song that just has all the energy to kind of like more of like a mellow and kind of hazy kind of winter song that's just kind of more melodic and kind of more emotional and just more kind of warming in that sort of sense. But it's kind of, I do appreciate this song. I do feel like it is kind of a winter song. I give it credit for that. Just kind of the energy, having something to match, to kind of have different vibes, to just be able to depict the two different angles in terms of like at least seasonal music to kind of go. I mean, they could have dropped another song like Miss Murder and had another one and crested a little bit further. I do feel like Love Like Winter to me feels like a more of a third single. I definitely feel like they probably should have included at least one more dynamite moment between. I just think the energy shifted way too quickly between Miss Murder and Love Like Winter. It just felt like that's kind of why I said it seemed like it went through the motions, is because the ferocious energy, the number one rock song single of Miss Murder, and then it goes directly to Winter after that. And I kind of would have thought that there would have been another single just to really capitalize on the summer of 2006 and that type stuff. But I mean, the record really didn't have it. I mean, this comes off to me as like a pretty established type song. The hook is not quite as catchy as Miss Murder, but I can see it being kind of an earworm. It just is kind of more of a makeshift song, something that you kind of hear on the radio on the way to work and that type of stuff, where it just kind of gets in your head. And it's not quite as party ready, but I can see it as like a winter record when you can see your breath out and the snow's out and that type of stuff. So it's pretty good for that. And like the Missing Frame was the third single, and this was kind of back on kind of like the summer vibes. I almost feel like this probably, I mean, I think the reason why they went with Love Like Winter is because they wanted to make sure that it was there for the winter. But this song, Missing Frame, kind of goes back to some of that kind of spring and early summer kind of energy that probably should have been there. But uh like I do feel like the song is catchy, but it does not have the ferocious this distinction of Miss Murder. It's definitely like the follow up. I would say Miss Murder and the Missing Frame are a great 1-2 punch, but it's just, it is noticeable. Like this song didn't chart on like the Billboard 100, so the first two singles did chart on like the regular charts, not just charted high on the rock charts, but this one didn't. This was kind of like a rock chart exclusive, but it is a good song. I definitely would have to say I give it a lot of credit just for the fact that it does bring back the energy, kind of has like more summer, kind of outgoing, contagious, energetic vibes that it needs, even if the chorus is not quite as viral as like Miss Murder was, and not quite as earworm as Love Like Winter, but it is good. So I give all three of the singles credit. They all kick ass, do kind of have like a eerie gothic rock to them, and just in that sense it's alternative, just like 3 Days Grace and like Fallout Boy around that time. So it's just another good concoction of that. But thing about it is there are some good moments on here that are different energy. If you're looking for a song like Miss Murder again that just has that shrill kind of contagiousness, it's not really to be found. But there are some good moments. Like I feel like the interview and like the Killing Lights both kind of have like some summery, kind of hazy summery energy that I know I'm mentioning the seasons a lot, but they have like some hazy summery energy that just kind of feels like just a real kind of hot malaise out there that just kind of has like some good vibes. Um, Not quite as party ready and as bar hop ready as like Miss Murder, but definitely just kind of in like a more homely setting, a more house party kind of setting. They just work for like those type vibes. I feel like 37 millimeter is a great electronic song that kind of does like some stuff just like Breathe Carolina kind of does. It's interesting to have gotten that as far back as 2006, because I don't think there were a ton of folks really doing like the kind of electronic rock type vibes. This is kind of a teaser of what could happen. I think like 3 Days Grace kind of did this too, but it's interesting. It's the only real song like it. There's not really any other type songs like 37 millimeter on here, but it does well for what it is. I definitely liked Prelude 1221. This is another wintry kind of song. I definitely like the bells and the kind of jingles at the beginning of the song. It's a great song overall. It's one of the, like, I don't talk about intros all the time, but this is definitely one. I noticed the popularity of this song, the Prelude song, on Spotify, and I wanted to try it, and it's worthy of being the second most popular song. This is the second most popular song from December Underground on Spotify besides Miss Murder, and this is pretty good. I mean, both of these, I mean, both Prelude 1221 and Love Like Winter come off as excellent kind of winter songs that kind of give off this some kind of cold energy and like a lot of good contingent kind of feels with that sort of stuff. So it's just good to kind of get that. Definitely didn't have a problem with it. I mean, I almost wanted the song to be longer, but I respect it as being like an intro. It did carry the energy pretty well. And like, I'm trying to think of if there were some other moments. The three singles, the two summer songs, the electronic song, the intro, and then there was another one that was kind of like a little bit of a taste of post grunge and alternative rock, which was Kiss and Control, which kind of starts off kind of like with some Creed and Puddle of Mud type feels at the beginning, and then switches into like more of like a mid tempo kind of thumper, kind of rock type thumper that goes on. And I definitely kind of felt like it had some good energy there. I do like that as like kind of an extra sense of more of like another house party type stuff. But this record really is not so much about being out and about that much. Like, they're like the Green Day album I reviewed back in August, the Father of All, kind of had a real kind of mastery of just like a real nightclub and night venue type setting. But this record, apart from like Miss Murder, really doesn't have like the out and about. It's more kind of central, not so much introverted in the sense where you're not doing anything, but just kind of more local kind of parties where it's more of like house parties, that type stuff. It's not like that's a problem, but there's just not many records that are designated stepping in your car, going out and seeing the sights and that type of stuff. Like, if you're going to go to New York for like the weekend, not really a record to kind of do that. And there's just not many club records on here and this that kind of stuff that kind of has like that same vibe. Like, I would probably say Miss Murder and 37 millimeter about the closest ones that kind of have that kind of vibe. But it's just pretty, like I said, regional or kind of more local in a sense and that type stuff. But I do think it does have some summer songs, does have some winter songs, that type stuff, just for different kind of variations of the sort of stuff that you do according to that. But it's just not entirely like it's social, but just not overtly outgoing in a sense of that kind of sense. So it's just kind of more like that. So, but yeah, me liking, I'll go ahead and list the 8 songs out of 12 that I enjoyed. So, Miss Murder, or that the 8 songs out of 12 I recommend to you. So, Miss Murder, Love Like Winter, The Missing Frame, The Interview, The Killing Lights, 37 millimeter, Prelude 1221, and Kiss and Control. Now, I mentioned all of these. Some of the moments that were not quite as enjoyable, like the other 4 songs, like Kill Caustic, Summer Shudder. I mean, I really could not get into like the kind of awkward and kind of not quite as balanced and synchronized instrumentation. There just were some of these that just kind of had a lot of messiness that was just not quite organized enough to really be able to get into compared to songs like just the way how fluid Miss Murder was and how crisp Love Like Winter was. It just felt like some of these the other 4 songs just didn't quite have the organization as far as being like potential other singles. Like, this record really didn't seem to even attempt to get like a 4th single and more kind of promotional type vibes. It seemed like it was pretty content with just having a few brief compact records and then being on to the next one, which is too bad about that. But yeah, so those are just some of the ones. Endlessly, She Said, is another one that kind of had that kind of vibe with the instrumentation. This was not quite as organized and quite as palatable enough to be able to do that sort of thing. But so, me liking 8 out of 12, that's actually quite a bit, but I can't quite give this record a 9. I'm going to give it an 8.75, just a hair beneath a 9 out of 10, because this is an excellent record, but I can't give it a 9 just because the energy of Miss Murder needed to be replicated. And I do feel like Love Like Winter at least switched the vibe and gave it from a different angle. But The Missing Frame was just not on par with like Miss Murder in terms of that. And it's like, it is good on the rock charts, but I do feel like if they weren't going to do like another single like Miss Murder, they needed at least a 4th single to kind of get this record more kind of impact beyond just like a brief, compact, to the point kind of record. And it just feels like this record is to the point. this it has a lot of briefness to it, and which is too bad because this was their largest record, but it was just so here today, gone tomorrow type vibe. They kind of it seemed like they missed capitalizing on a record that could have had more. But the problem with it is not so much they didn't capitalize, just the fact that the record didn't have more hit singles on it. It's just I can't see what could have. There's really not a record on here that could have competed with Miss Murder. And I feel like the only other record that really has like the energy of like the singles in terms, I mean, these are there's some other songs that are really good, but apart from Prelude 21 or 1221, there's just not enough that really breaks through the ice as far as like mainstream commercial kind of vibes towards it. I mean, some of these are just kind of good, but they're not like social dynamite kind of songs where they're gonna have viral moments. That's just kind of, I mean, but that's what it is. So 8.75 out of 10. I feel like the social score I'm gonna have to give like a 6.5, just because three singles was good and they are pretty damn good, but they just don't have. I mean, it really does feel like I wouldn't want to label AFI like a one hit wonder, but it really does feel like Miss Murder kind of steals the show just with the sheer energy and quality and just impact that that song kind of had. Like I said, one of the top rock songs of the 2000s decade and one of the top songs of the 2000s decade, but it just didn't have anywhere near close to that with anything else. But Love Like Winter was good. So that's just kind of the concept. So 6.5 out of 10 social. In terms of the future, like AFI dropped an album back in 2021. I don't know an overabundance about them. This is the first record I've reviewed by them, so I'm kind of interested in seeing what else they're about. I'm going to have to review their 2003 album. I forgot what it's called. I'll look it up real quick. Sing the Sorrow. So I kind of want to review that one and see what else is kind of going along with it. But just to kind of say and stuff, like I think it's pretty solid. But yeah, don't confuse the issue in thinking that because I said that Miss Murder is so damn good that the rest of the record isn't. It is pretty solid. It's just the fact that Miss Murder really steals the show, and there's just nothing on par with that sheer quality of it. But there are some great songs on here worth checking out, and some good winter songs, some good summer songs. Not many kind of club going out moments, but a lot of quality house party moments that just are great for a weekend and kind of lazy weekend type stuff. Lazy in a local sense.